sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to B-Ball Breakdown. I am extremely proud to bring on my friend Roland Lazenby, a fantastic writer on the NBA who's written a whole lot of books, some including a Jerry West biography that actually is terrific. He also did another one called The Show Inside Story of the Lakers. And I brought him on the show to talk about his latest book, which is called Michael Jordan, The Life. So, Roland, thanks for joining us. I'm really excited to have you on here to get into some nuts and bolts of Michael Jordan.
Hey, Coach Nick, it's an honor to be on. I enjoy all your video update. It's a great teaching tool for basketball.
Well, thank you. I mean, and for full disclosure, sports fans, you know, we are both brothers in the Triangle Offense family of family tree, so we have that connection as well. And that actually kind of brings us a little bit towards the Michael Jordan book. But to begin with, if people haven't read it yet, you have some incredible detailed genealogy of Michael Jordan going back to, you know, his ancestors in the South. And I was wondering just how difficult was that, and how long did it take to research that kind of rich detail?
It took a lot of work. I went through 5,000 death certificates in this county on the North Carolina coastal plain, and these death certificates were from 1912 to 1919, and it was really fascinating. It showed me a lot. I was able to find Jordan's key ancestors and the things that happened to them, and it helped me begin to tell this story. When I do biographies like this, I like to begin them from a cultural and a family approach, and then take it into basketball and see how all those factors help shape the competitor. And that's what I did with this one.
What I really liked about it, what resonated with me, is that, you know, we can all understand that Michael Jordan was physically gifted beyond belief. But I feel like we've seen guys who are physically gifted not excel in the NBA. And so what I loved about what you were detailing is, you know, there was a lot more reasons for why this guy in particular became the greatest player that we've ever seen.
Right, and I think number one on that list, as I mentioned, is his ability to listen, and his ability to attend to what the North Carolina coaches were saying as a freshman. But it also meant that he was able to process all those things, allowed him to start as a freshman, of course, which put him in place to make that shot at the Final Four in New Orleans to beat Georgetown, which sort of ignited the Jordan legend, because he was really just an average Joe. I mean, he was a good freshman, a good player, but that was the first spark of his true legend in the public mind in a lot of ways.
So, just to give an overview of what this book is about, you start off, you know, way back in history, tracing, you know, his ancestors, going back to, I believe it's his great grandfather. Is that how far back you went?
Right. Who was 5'5" and crippled, but a really fierce dude. And I was looking for Jordan. I grew up in the South. I was in 8th grade when the schools integrated, so I had seen some of Jim Crow. But I wondered, here's Jordan, this fierce guy. I mean, he is a different cat. And I often wondered, covering him, who were his people during Jim Crow? And I found these fierce people on both sides of his family who had success in their own ways against a very stacked deck. It didn't just happen with Jordan. He was the product of generations.
In the beginning of his career, I think what might be lost, and what is reminded to me, having grown up in Chicago, going to all these games, is, you know, Michael Jordan might have kind of been the Allen Iverson before Allen Iverson in the beginning of his career.
Right. He became very cynical. And the Bulls changed a lot of coaches. He was in a big disconnect with Jerry Krause, who represented the new ownership. The Bulls were a terrible team when he got there. A lot of cocaine abusers and different bad customers on the roster. And Jordan knew none of that. The thing that allowed him to save himself and the team, obviously, one, he was so talented and played so hard, but two, he came out of system basketball at UNC. It was a very tight system. And as Anthony Tichy, who played at Wake Forest and also played against Jordan in high school, he said Jordan never got the credit for having all that physical talent and all of the character to come right in and do what the coaches asked in that system offense, that very confining offense at North Carolina.
It's interesting because, in this day and age, it's hard to fathom a guy that good spending more than even a year in college. And here we have him. He spent 3 years in college and was really able to develop under, Dean Smith, which is, I think, this is the main reason why he was able to embrace the triangle later, wouldn't you say?
That's what Tex Winter was adamant about. The fact that Michael had played for Dean Smith. Now, Dean Smith did not run the triangle, but there was a big triangle connection with the Carolina program in that Dean Smith's top assistant, Bill Guthridge, played for Tex Winter in the triangle and then was Tex Winter's assistant coach and then went to Carolina and became the top aide to Dean Smith, the kind of guy that organized practices and all these different things. And so there was a lot of cross-pollination there that made things possible.
I'm just kind of curious. You've been getting a lot of feedback, and it's all fantastic stuff about the book. Has there anything that jumped out at you that people keep saying, man, I didn't know that about Michael Jordan's early years, his first 6-7 years in the league? Is there anything that strikes you?
Well, I think lots of things. And I guess probably the overall cynicism would be number one on that list, because Michael was being marketed very heavily then. But he had this beautiful image, yet beneath all that, there was a guy who was really angry and frustrated, and he just sort of turned to discovering just how big his talent was. Because as Michael explained to me several times, he didn't know. He didn't know the things he could do. And he said, that's the thing a lot of times people don't understand about my career. I was discovering the whole time these things that I could do. It wasn't like I had the knowledge that I could do them. It was all brand new. Every time he turned around, there was something like that.
Well, let's move on to another interesting moment of his career that you covered as far as overcoming the Pistons and what that was like and how much they had to overcome against that team and what that represented. So talk to me a little bit about that and what he had to do and what the team ended up finally accomplishing.
They were a very physical team, coached by a very bright man in Chuck Daly. And so I watched this young guy, coached by Doug Collins, and Jordan take them on. And, the Pistons weren't real taken with Jordan. And they put him on the floor a lot. And they were very physical with him. And it was a frustrating series over several years before Jordan and his Bulls were able to beat the Pistons in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Tex Winter, again, who's been a guide for much of my NBA experience, Tex Winter said, Michael would not have become the player he was without that very physical challenge from the Pistons. And of course, you can't compare it to basketball today.
How did that compare to the next 3 championships? After they won those 3, what about Michael was different that allowed him to maintain an even greater record of excellence, it seems?
The Bulls and their triangle offense were sort of like the Spurs. At some point, things, I don't want to say it becomes easier, but there's a way to play that system teams fall into, and it helps them deal with these issues of mental and physical weariness. That the game's not as hard when you become a veteran team that has a system. It's plenty difficult, don't get me wrong, but it's not quite the same thing. And so watching these triangle teams really come to execute this old style offense, it really brought a wonderful discipline to pro basketball. And it showed the NBA a different way to play. Not just Michael Jordan, but the NBA.
So after the next three championships, clearly Michael Jordan has a character arc that we've seen from all the way in his youth to the end of his career. Tell us how far your book goes in chronicling his journey.
It takes him into the future. Well, it's not hard to predict that he's going to be successful going forward. And so you look at those things, and the key thing about Michael is he was so dynamic, so magical as a player. Virtually everything else he attempts in life, he's guaranteed to disappoint. He went and played baseball. That ultimately was extremely disappointing for the fans. When he went to Washington as executive, ditto, disappointment. The fans almost seemed to feel like he had let them down. Goes into Charlotte, makes mistakes while he's learning. More disappointment, more disappointment. But, he's 51, headed to 52. He's getting to the age where people are starting to at least accept the fact that he's not Superman without the cape anymore. But as an executive, he's not bad, and he's going to have a good team. You can just sense it.
Yeah, I like what they're doing. So I would like to give him at least this year to show us continued improvement with Coach Clifford, what he's doing there as well. It's exciting stuff. So again, if you haven't gotten the book that Roland has written, you have to get out there and get it, because it's a fascinating description of Michael Jordan, the life, all the way from before he was born through into the future. People compare it to your writing to Michael Feinstein and those kind of guys, but I have to say it's David Halberstam is a lot more what I'm reminded of when I read your stuff, because of the breadth of the research, and then the writing itself is so elevated into an intelligent level. So I would put your books next to his on my shelf, and I would encourage others to pick it up and read them.
Those are very kind words, Coach. I will tell you, I got to sit with David Halberstam in the '98 finals of the Eastern Conference between Indiana and Chicago. And he was such a great writer. I don't even belong in the same sentence with the guy, but it is very kind of you to make that comparison. And, of course, the breaks of the game, what a basketball book.
Absolutely. People always email me or tweet me asking me what books they should read. And usually it's about coaching, but I tend to try and make sure I sneak breaks of the game in there as well, because, again, it is I was reading that when I was 9 and 10 and 11 over every year. I'd read it over again. So another great book. And, well, thanks for joining us, Roland. We'll have to have you come back on, and we'll really get into the triangle offense coming up soon. And don't forget, sports fans, at BBallBreakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Roland?
I am in.